Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to my channel. So today's episode is insane. So today we are talking about the Jeffrey Epstein case, and I don't know if you guys have ever done any research on Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, I've been studying this case for a week and there is just so much information, and so we're actually going to be going over Epstein today because tomorrow I want to be talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, who her name has been in the news a lot recently, and it's crazy. I want to get into it, but I don't want to spoil anything in the beginning. It's just crazy because they definitely seem to be partners in crime, and she was heavily involved in Epstein's life. And so yeah, she is going to have her day in court in November of this year, and so maybe we'll have to do like an updated part. But I don't know, I felt like it was going to confuse some of you guys if I just did Ghislaine Maxwell and I didn't actually cover Epstein, because I mean they're connected. And so today we're going to be talking about Epstein and everything that went on there. I mean, it is nuts. It's like the epitome of how rich people can get out of jail, because he didn't really have to deal with any crazy consequences, and he was just so powerful. He was like, oh, he had connections to people all over the world, like princes and presidents and attorney generals and different countries, like prime ministers. Like, he knew everyone, and he essentially had blackmail on everyone. And there's also a lot of conspiracies at the end of this about what happened to him. Did he die? Was he murdered? Was this a big cover-up? Is he missing? Is he hiding out somewhere? And I will just let you guys be the judge of that. So if you guys are new here, I just want to introduce you to The Courtroom. It is a new series I'm doing where my name is Courtney, this is my bedroom, and you guys actually get to be the judge. So I'm going to be presenting all the information, and you guys can head down to the comments and let me know what conspiracy theories you guys think are real. Also, if you guys have not already subscribed, make sure to go ahead, hit this little subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, and turn on that post notification bell to be notified every single time I post a new video. All right, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. Jeffrey Epstein was born in Brooklyn, New York. It was in his early 20s, where he was a physics and math teacher at the Dalton School, which is an elite Manhattan prep school. And it was his connections at that school that later got him a job at an investment firm called Bear Stearns. Now, one thing to note about Epstein is he was involved in one of the biggest Ponzi schemes of all time. So if you guys aren't familiar with a Ponzi scheme, essentially it's a schemer within a company that will reach out to different investors, and they'll say, hey, if you give me $100,000, I can give you $120,000 at the end of this month. And so they're kind of like, the more money that you give me, the more money I can give back to you, you know, something along those lines. And the trick here is that they, instead of taking the money that the investor, you know, gives them and investing it to earn more money, they kind of just take it for themselves and sort of just steal it. And the issue is the more investors you put into the Ponzi scheme, it just kind of starts getting trickier and trickier, because they get really impatient and they're expecting more and more and more money to be coming in. And then also you have to think the schemer, you know, has to take a little bit of money for themselves too. And eventually the whole thing just kind of blows up because the schemer just doesn't have any more money to give back, and so the whole thing just ends up blowing up. And that's exactly what happened in this Ponzi scheme that Epstein was involved in. Epstein used to consult for a company called Tower Financial, where this whole Ponzi scheme really happened. And because of this Ponzi scheme, they were able to cheat out investors out of $450 million, which is crazy. And I mean, that all happened in the 1980s, 1990s. So if you're talking in today's terms, that's about like $796 million that were cheated out. However, Epstein didn't really suffer any consequences of this, because he ended up leaving this company in 1989, which was multiple years before the whole Ponzi scheme actually came to light. But he is accused of stealing almost $100 million. He then went on to start his own firm in 1982. And this is where he really made his fortune, because his finance firm only worked with people that had just about $1 billion or more. So by working with the wealthy, it really got him into some very high profile social circles, including former President Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, the CEO of Victoria's Secret, Woody Allen, and a bunch more. So not only did he have a lot of power, but the people around him also had a lot of power. And I'm not gonna lie, a lot of people are really confused on how he actually got his wealth. I mean, it had to have been from the Ponzi scheme, that'd be my guess. But yeah, a lot of people were just confused because, I mean, this guy had like endless money. Like, it was just crazy. And so there's a lot of conspiracy theories, like technically like the whole Ponzi scheme, like him taking $100 million is also kind of a conspiracy conspiracy. Like, I don't think that was actually ever proven, but a lot of people are very confused as to where he was getting his money. And at one point, this dude owned 6 different residences, including a private island in the Caribbean. And so this island was called Little St. James. It was a 75-acre, $7.95 million island. Now, no one other than the people who have actually been on the island really know what it's like on the inside. There's been a few reports from former employees that have said that in the main residence, which is where Jeffrey lived, there were 2 offices that no one was allowed to go into except for the maid that worked for Jeffrey. Inside, they said that there were these security boxes. Now later, whenever the police are going to raid the whole island, they did find some really interesting stuff. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, but they were able to find photos of underage girls, $70,000 in cash, 48 diamonds, and a fake passport. Now, a contractor that actually worked on the island came forward and said that there were multiple photos of topless women and basically fully nude photographs all throughout the island. So they actually believe that this island was used to sex traffic girls. And one thing that they actually saw that was super bizarre on the island was this temple. And to this day, we actually don't know what that temple was actually used for. Some people said that it was a piano room because Jeffrey was classically trained in piano, so he just needed a space to practice. Other people said it was just a gym for him to go and work out. But if you look really closely, there was something that was raising a lot of red flags. There was a wooden bar that hangs off the outside of the temple. Now, why would there be a bar or like a lock on the outside of the temple? So it's pretty normal to have a lock on the inside of the door, right? So you go to a hotel room, they have that little sliding bar thing, and that's to keep people from entering. Well, this temple had a bar on the outside, which would prevent people from leaving. So there was a lot of speculation that there was sex trafficking going on here, and that maybe this was the place where he would keep those girls. And knowing this piece of information, it honestly makes the next victim story so scary. So honestly, I would highly recommend you guys checking out some of the victim stories. Obviously, I can't put all of that in this video, but it is really scary, and I think it just brings to light how manipulative and how scary this stuff actually was. So there was a 15-year-old girl that, after being forced into sexual acts with Jeffrey and a couple other people on his island, she tried to escape by swimming off the island. Obviously, they swam after her and they had a little search party, and once they found her, they actually allegedly took her passport and kept her captive. And again, that's so scary, knowing that the temple has a lock on the outside. Again, none of that is proven, but that is what the victim said, and so it's just really scary to think about that stuff. Now, Jeffrey is pretty much known for creating this pyramid scheme for abusing girls. So if you guys don't know what a pyramid scheme is, it's shaped like a pyramid. The person on top is the one who benefits the most, and then underneath him, he gets people to recruit their friends, and then the more people they recruit, the more money that they make, which is so disturbing. And so that whole thing just kind of blew up into an international sex trafficking ring with some of the most powerful people in the world. And one thing that honestly just irks me about the whole situation is one person can commit one act, like with a minor, and then they get locked away for years and years and years. This dude abused hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of girls and nothing happened, which honestly, that's where I just don't understand how the criminal justice system would let that happen. Like, how could they fail these girls in such a significant way? I just don't really understand that. And a key person in this whole case is Ghislaine Maxwell. Again, I'm going to be talking about her tomorrow, and I have like a whole video because she is really the centerpiece of a lot of this, because she was like the head honcho. She was like the biggest recruiter. So she would go out and she would be his recruiter. So she'd go out there and she'd start hunting for these underage girls, and a lot of them came from like underprivileged families or girls that just didn't have the best home life, and she'd essentially prey on these girls. So she'd go up to them and she'd say, hey, I know this guy who is looking for a masseuse, like he pays really well, like do you want me to put you in contact with him? And so then these girls would show up to the house. Sorry, I'm literally holding ice because it is 79.2 degrees in my bedroom, so just sorry if you look and you see that my hands are wet. It's because I'm literally holding ice to try to calm me down right now. She is accused of finding underage girls for Jeffrey, manipulating them, grooming them, and she'd basically just go up to them and say like, hey, I know this really great guy, he can give you anything that you need. And that's sort of how they get stuck in the web, right? because Jeffrey has the power and the money to do anything, right? If you're looking to be a model, he has connections to the CEO of Victoria's Secret. If you're looking to get into college, he has connections to Harvard and pretty much any college you can ask for. He has all the money in the world, really anything. And so he would use that as leverage basically. And so these young girls that don't know any better, they're like, oh yeah, like I would love a job. Or it would just be young girls going up to other young girls because of this whole pyramid scheme situation, and they'd say like, yo, like I know this guy who pays like super well, like I got like $300 in cash for just giving this guy a massage. And so then the other girls are like, wait, I want $300 in cash. So they show up to his house, they go into his massage room, and that's when they are sexually assaulted by Jeffrey and sometimes raped.
In a perverted pyramid scheme, Epstein would pay extra for his victims to find more girls for him. The younger, the better.
You could tell his addiction wasn't drugs or alcohol, it was definitely young girls. And if I couldn't bring him a girl, when he didn't get his obsession, he just would get so mad.
How many girls do you think you brought to Jeffrey Epstein?
I would say at the minimum 50.
And I mean, everywhere this guy went, he was able to find girls. And sometimes he wouldn't even keep the girls for himself. He would actually traffic them off to other people. So one victim from Epstein actually came out and said that she was sex trafficked to Prince Andrew. And so Epstein and Andrew were pretty close. They would go on vacations together, and Andrew has traveled on Epstein's private jet on multiple occasions. And this victim actually came forward and said that whenever she was being trafficked off to Prince Andrew, she was told to come back with some sort of potential blackmail. And this was pretty normal for Epstein. He loved getting blackmail on everyone and anyone. And that's how he was able to keep this for a secret for so long. And even with witnesses coming out, Prince Andrew has always denied any connection with these allegations. And pretty much anyone who has ever had allegations connected to Jeffrey Epstein, they have always denied them. And the victims that have came out talking about all of this stuff, they all have the same story, and there's honestly a lot of victims. In March of 2015, a 14-year-old came forward and said that she was taken to Jeffrey's home and given $300 to strip off her clothes and massage him. Later, her mom found $300 in cash in her room and was like, what is this? So she called the cops, and they actually told her to call the FBI. I guess that was like the last straw, and that's really what got the ball rolling. So from there on, they launched a 13-month investigation. The police interviewed 5 victims and 17 witnesses, and then when they went to search the house, all of the hard drives for the computers were missing and all of the camera footage was gone. It was almost like someone tipped him off. And so this is just me speculating. Now we know how powerful this guy is and how many connections he has and how much blackmail he has on people. I mean, I bet you someone high up in the FBI was probably like, hey, yeah, we're about to search your house, so like you might want to like get rid of some stuff. However, they were able to find a high school transcript and multiple other pieces of evidence that did prove that there were underage girls in the home. So police found multiple photos of underage girls laying around the house and hidden cameras everywhere. I mean, this guy had surveillance everywhere in the house, like even the bathrooms, even the showers, the bedrooms. By the end of this investigation, the police were able to compile reports from 34 confirmed minors. In May of 2006, the Palm Beach Police Department, they filed a probable cause statement saying that Epstein will be charged, and this ended up going all the way to a grand jury. And that is when Jeffrey got one felony charge of solicitation of prostitution, which Jeffrey entered into a not guilty plea. Now at this point, the Palm Beach Police Department, they are so frustrated because they're like, what the heck? They just thought that this was way too lenient, and so that is when they pushed for the FBI to get involved. So the FBI opened up their own separate investigation, and they called this Operation Leap Year. Fast forward to June of 2008, following the plea deal, Jeffrey was charged with a lesser charge of solicitation of prostitution involving a minor. He pled guilty and was sentenced to 18 months in prison, which he was actually released after 13 months, and he did have to register as a sex offender. But it's just crazy because he could have gotten 15 years in prison for that, and he got 13 months. And it wasn't even really jail if you think about it. He ended up getting like a suite, and he got work release privileges, which is crazy because a sex offender does not get work release privileges. And so he would stay at his suite, he'd wake up in the morning, he'd get ready for work, he'd go work his 9 to 5, and he'd come back to the prison, he'd fall asleep, and he'd do it all over again. And a lot of people were really upset about this because it was essentially just a slap on the wrist. And what's even worse is he actually, in his plea deal, it granted immunity to any of his co-conspirators. And what was so frustrating about this plea deal was it essentially shut down the FBI's investigation. And I mean, they had thousands and thousands of pieces of evidence against this guy, and they could have hit him, like I said, with 15 years. But instead, he got 13 months and work release privileges. And so on top of that, he was also a registered sex offender in the state of New York. And in the state of New York, if you are a registered sex offender, you need to check in with the NYPD every 90 days. And he never did that, like not even once. And so at this point, he's completely scot-free. He gets out of jail after 13 months in 2009, I believe is when he got released, and he goes back to his normal life. He never checks in with the NYPD. It's like he never actually got in trouble. And everything was literally smooth sailing for him until November 2018. And this was when a news article about Jeffrey's history with sexual abuse allegations was published. And this is what sparked everything back up. And I mean, this fired people up. People wanted justice. And the feds were embarrassed by this story, so they were sort of forced to open the case back up and take action. So I'm actually going to be glancing down at my notes because I want to make sure that I get every detail right for you guys. This is where things start to get really wild, and this is where the conspiracy theories are gonna just start flying back and forth. So on July 6, 2019, Jeffrey was arrested for several counts of sex trafficking and several counts of conspiracy to commit sex trafficking. Here he pled not guilty to these charges, but was facing 45 years in prison. So to put this into perspective, he was 66 at the time. So if he was found guilty, it was pretty fair to say that he was going to be spending the rest of his life in prison. 2 days later, on July 8th, he was officially charged and was being held with no bond and was awaiting a trial date. So then fast forward to July 23rd, that is when he was found injured in his cell at 1:30 a.m. with marks on his neck, similar to the ones that if you just tried to commit suicide, you'd most likely have those marks on your neck. Now, his cellmate at the time was a former NYPD officer that was charged with 4 counts of murder. So then they decided they were going to question him about it, and he denied anything. Like, he didn't know anything about it. And then when Jeffrey regained his consciousness, he said that he remembered nothing. So obviously they're gonna put Jeffrey on suicide watch at this point. So he was there at the jail for about 6 days before they transferred him to a special housing unit. In this housing unit, Jeffrey did end up having a cellmate, and guards were actually supposed to check on him in his cell every 30 minutes. But on the night of August 9th, for some reason his cellmate was removed from his cell and a replacement was not made. To this day, we actually don't know the reason why his cellmate was removed. On top of all of that, guys, this is just going to make your head spiral. So on top of that, like I said, the guards are still supposed to check on him every 30 minutes, but they ended up falling asleep and they failed to check on Epstein for 3 hours. So they got really nervous because they were like, oh no, we just fell asleep, and they allegedly falsified the reports, like the records, so that they wouldn't get in trouble. Now, I don't even know if I need to say alleged because the FBI was actually able to prove this. To make matters worse, there was actually 2 cameras that were facing Jeffrey's cell. I'm about to get really heated really quickly because I just think there's too many coincidences when it comes to this case. There were 2 cameras that were facing his cell, and what are the odds? They just weren't working that night. Sorry, I am gonna get really sarcastic because this just blows my mind. And so at 6:30 on August 10th, the guards come to check on Epstein and they find him dead in his cell. So they call emergency responders, they try, but he had already passed. His death was very quickly ruled a suicide. And in his autopsy, and I'm actually gonna look at my notes just to make sure that I get this right, in his autopsy, they showed that Jeffrey had multiple breaks in his neck as well as a break in the hyoid bone. And so a break in the hyoid bone, wow, I'm saying that so terribly, hyoid. That's just not, it's not a word I'm very common, like it's not in my vocabulary, okay? But anywho, a break in this bone, it can be from someone who commits suicide, but it is more commonly found in homicides through strangulation. Now, there was a lot of talk here, and Jeffrey's defense attorney was really upset with how quickly that they just sort of rolled it a suicide and moved it off to the side. In doing so, when they started to look into this, that is when they learned that the two guards had falsified records to cover up that they had fallen asleep. And they actually discovered that that night they left Epstein alone without checking on him for 8 hours. The guards' defense on this is poor working conditions. They said that they were just extremely overworked that night, and they're really upset that they're just being made out to be this scapegoat for his death, when in reality it should be the poor working conditions that are to blame. Now, the guards were charged in falsifying records, but they have never been seen or even suspected to be involved in Epstein's death. So this is where the conspiracy theories sort of start piling up. And so I'm gonna give you guys 3 of the most common conspiracy theories, and I want you guys to head down to the comments and let me know which one you believe. So the very first one is, it is what it is. I guess it's not really a conspiracy theory, but a lot of people just believe he was 66, he knew the damning evidence that the police had up against him, and the odds of him spending the rest of his life in jail was most likely how that was going to play out. So he just decided to end his life before that could happen. The second one is murder. And a lot of people believe this because, remember, he has blackmail on everyone, like Prince Andrew, Clinton's, Trump, everyone that you could possibly think of. He has so much blackmail, and so a lot of people believe that maybe one or maybe multiple people came together and made sure that none of that blackmail evidence could ever see the light of day. The third conspiracy is that Jeffrey is still currently alive, and that the body that they found in the cell is actually a body double, and that Jeffrey actually escaped and he is currently residing on his island in the Caribbean. And I don't know, that was the first time I'd ever actually heard of that, and the reason why they believe that is they actually took a photo of him on the stretcher and you could see his ear. They like blurred out the face, but you could see his ear, and they compared it to a photo a few years before also of his ear, and the shaping on the inside was different, which is causing a lot of people to believe that maybe that wasn't actually Jeffrey, and that he escaped, and that he is currently on his island in another country, you know, hiding. And I'm gonna be honest with you, we're dealing with some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the entire world. I don't write anything off. Like, I think anything is possible, and if in a few years we find out that he is still alive, I don't think I'm gonna be surprised, if I'm being honest. So I want you guys to go ahead and head down to the comments. Let me know what you guys think down there. Also subscribe if you guys have not already. But that was our long episode about Epstein. Check back tomorrow when we start talking about Ghislaine Maxwell. So Ghislaine is kind of like, or supposedly, the thing is with Ghislaine's, I'm gonna have to be really careful just because her court date has not come. So everything is alleged. Right now she's technically innocent according to the United States justice system. Supposedly she is like the mastermind behind this whole pyramid scheme situation, and I think you guys are really going to be interested in it. So definitely check back tomorrow. Put on that post notification bell if you guys have not already. Do it. Love you guys, and I'll see you all later. Bye.